From the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance, Friday, September 12, 2014. A brief interview with Dale Knapp, Research Director. 3, 2, 1. Mr. Knapp, WISTAX has a new report out about K-12 education and how it fared in Wisconsin and the U.S. in the recession and after. What does the report say?
Well, when you look at 2012 in and of itself, Wisconsin spending was down 6.2%, which was the largest cut in the U.S. However, when you look over a longer period that encompassed both the recession and the recovery, spending here was up 3.4%, which really matched the U.S. average and placed us in the middle of the pack, about 30th. Essentially, what the report shows is that because of the recession, other states were cutting education spending early to deal with falling revenues. Wisconsin put off many of those cuts until late and made most of their reductions in 2012.
How did Wisconsin cope with the recession when it came to funding education?
Well, Wisconsin was different than most states. When you look back, we used a lot of federal stimulus money to help prop up education spending during the early years of the recession. The problem comes following that. When the federal stimulus money went away, there was a hole in the state budget, and we ended up having to cut aids to schools and cut revenue limits in 2012. Thus, the growth in spending early compared to reductions nationally, but a big cut in 2012 when everything came to a head here.
Education is labor intensive. How was employment affected in the education sector in Wisconsin during the recession?
Wisconsin schools have been cutting staff since about 2010. Actually, Wisconsin began cutting staff a little bit earlier than the U.S. norm. During the entire period, staff here was down 3.3% compared to about 2%, under 2% nationally. The reasons for the staff cuts here are numerous. Part of it is a cumulative impact of revenue limits on school revenues and spending. Second reason is declining enrollment. Wisconsin enrollments have been declining for about 10 years now, and so with fewer students, fewer staff are needed. And the third impact is obviously state decisions, the tightening of revenue caps in 2010 and 11, and the big cuts in 2012.
How was employment affected in the education sector in other states when compared to Wisconsin?
Well, as mentioned, reductions here were larger than the national average. Some of the reductions were bigger in other states. We saw reductions of 10% or more in some states during this time. So we did see reductions sort of across the board. In states that were less affected by the recession, we did see some increases, though.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. That's Dale Knapp, Research Director of the nonprofit, nonpartisan Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance. For more information, go to www.wistax.com.